Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a supporter of the show by visiting thebittertruth.info. I also have a Substack page, abeabdelhadi.substack.com. Been on there about a month. I'm enjoying that process. It's better than Facebook. Nobody censors you. And it's not long stuff. I mean, I did post a chapter to my book, but mostly it's like, 500 word articles that if anybody goes to the toilet, they can pretty much read really quickly and get some information. I don't know, just get some information and, just not keep watching the same shit on television. But yeah, support the show, support the Substack, whatever you can do. If you want to just buy a t-shirt and be on your way, that's great. We appreciate any help we get. As you know that, we don't get advertising. So there's that. Obviously Roe v. Wade happened. We knew it was happening. We knew it was coming. In fact, it was breathing hard. Ha ha. That's the oldest joke in the world, and I like it. But we knew what was going on. And we knew this because we had the heads up because somebody leaked the decision that the court was going to come down with. But it's always kind of like, you get that call that your friend died and you knew for a couple of months that he was dying and he was coming any day now. But then he finally died and you get that call. You go, oh, shit. You're hoping that, there's like a last minute, Calvary thing or something. But same thing with this, comes through and you're kind of going, damn, that really sucks. And the thing that I like to joke about is, I don't really mean it as a joke. I used to mean it as a joke just because I used to like to watch my right-wing friends' heads explode when I said we should give 12-year-old boys reversible vasectomies because then they get reversed when they're ready to have a kid or a partner or, if they're gay, they find a guy and they want to have kids and they're over 18. Over 18, do what the hell you want. I don't care. And, then they get reversed and then they, or don't. I don't know how that works, but whatever. But then they'd have a better time at the prom. Let's face it. Not so worried about condoms and pregnancies and things like that. They might get a dose of something, but I don't know, give them a pill and knock it out. But that's not what's going on. And what did happen was we set women's rights back a million fucking years, and which we've been doing. This has been an all-out war on women since the beginning of time. Don't know how familiar you are with the construction of the Bible, but it's well known that the Catholic Church left out the more progressive books written by women in the Old Testament time who were still kind of coming out of the pagan goddess religions, kind of getting used to this whole new patriarchal thing, which was what the Old Testament was. The Torah was a Jewish book written by a bunch of guys, largely, fucking sheep herders, but it's the law of God. That's immutable. That's, that you can't change that. That's God. Science is arrogant though, because science is arrogant. Really? Okay. At least they told me that Pluto wasn't a planet anymore and they figured out a way to explain it. And I didn't know. But science is not arrogant. Science does change. And that's why it's called science. I don't mean that bullshit fucking science that, the Pfizer people pitch or Anthony Fauci pitches. I'm talking about real science where you have, data and peer groups and all that kind of stuff. So, but for those of you that have been watching, this isn't about women. And in this country, I mean, shit, women didn't have the right to vote till 100 years ago. And a woman couldn't get a credit card until 1974 without her father or uncle or husband co-signing for her. Helen Gurley Brown, who was the editor of Cosmopolitan for a long time. I mean, in 1967, she could not get a credit card without a co-signer. That's just ridiculous. Don't tell me that, we've always been about whatever. It's not. But this isn't about kids. If it was about kids, we would have, fucking gun control, right? We would have, and I don't mean taking away people's guns. I mean, Japan has guns. They had 10 gun deaths last year. If we were about kids, we would be about a license and maybe a mental test and a physical, not a states' rights bullshit thing where you have one state where you can walk in at Big Five and get a fucking AR-15 and then walk right into a hospital and shoot it up without so much as a background check. So this happy horse shit that, we're about kids is not, because then what do we do when these kids are born? Right. Most of these women, they're going to be affected by this are poor people, black and brown people, poor white people. It's a class issue now. I'll tell you a real quick story. I know a ton of women that have had abortions, by the way, and none of them ran to the clinic, jumping and skipping, happy to do it. But it was a tough decision and had to get made for a lot of reasons. I dated a girl a while ago now, but when she was 16, she got an abortion, but her parents had means. Okay, her mom and dad were well off, so her and her mom flew to New Mexico, right? Because her dad had a buddy that was a doctor. He wanted it connected back to where they were living. Spent 3 days out there, got it done, paid for it. Ate, had a room for 3 days, airfare, flew home. Which that means anybody who is not of means is going to be fucked. And what are those people going to be fucked about besides having a kid that they weren't planning or didn't want? Okay. Because the guy isn't going to be doing jack or shit. And we're not going to do jack or shit to go get him or to garnish his wages or to put him in fucking jail. None of that. Woman's left holding the bag every goddamn time. And don't give me this God's will bullshit. I'll get to that in a second. But swear to God, no pun intended. Just spare me. Because if you believed in that shit, you would be forcing women to have kids and then refusing to feed the kids, give the kid an education, give them possibly a good job, right? No, we're going to make them pick up a weapon and go overseas and kill Black and brown people. The Pentagon released a study a couple of years back, and it shocked me that they released this study. But the number one and two reasons people join the military, despite their cognitive dissonance, is what the Pentagon called it, because basically everyone knows these wars are bullshit and they're for profit. But the reason why people join up is medical and education, the two main reasons, because they can't afford to get an education on their own and they can't afford their medical care. And if they don't come back dead, maimed, or insane, maybe we'll pay for college, right? But yeah, so this isn't about women or babies, rather. This isn't about children protecting the unborn. Because once, like George Carlin said, prenatal, we love you. Or I'm paraphrasing, prenatal, we love you. Preschool, you're fucked. We don't care what happens. And then we decry the welfare queen and all this other pseudo racist shit that we spit out with a straight face, by the way, after we just said, you got to have a fucking kid. And don't you think it's interesting that these same Second Amendment people are usually the same people that are all about this pro-life crap, right? But they don't seem to separate the church and the state. That doesn't mean anything. I don't give a shit if you're a Jew or Buddhist or Muslim, Episcopalian. I don't give a fuck. Whatever you believe is whatever you believe. You have freedom of religion in this country, but therefore I have freedom from religion in this country, which means we don't legislate on your fairy tales any more than I would legislate on Aesop's fables or Grimm's fairy tales or anything else. We don't make up laws based on Snow White, right? We just don't. But this gets to my bigger point, and that is, I think we should abolish the Supreme Court. It's not an original thought. I've been hearing it for a long time, but all it's become is a cowardly punt for politicians, not statesmen, but politicians who care about re-election, to just punt the hard questions over to the court, right? That lawmakers don't want to make laws and have to go back home and be responsible for it. All right. They'll never pass meaningful gun legislation in this country, not so long as the situation is as it is, where we're corporate owned, and we are. Those of you that still think that the government is screwing up and, shouldn't be running things, I got news for you. The government doesn't run anything anymore. I'll say that again. The government doesn't run anything anymore. Nothing. No prisons, no schools, nothing. 40% of county hospitals in this country are privately owned. That's why when we had 1.5 million hospital beds in 1975, and they went down to 900,000 by 2020 when COVID hit. Interesting that we didn't spend money. We spent money on defense, but we didn't spend money on increasing the number of ICU beds in this country, right? That's before I really go off the rails, that's where I think we should abolish the Supreme Court, though. Because decisions like this, and if you pay attention, largely, with the exceptions of Brown versus Topeka, things like that, they largely make these shitty decisions. Plessy versus Ferguson, all that did was codify separate but equal facilities for colored folk. That's what it did. That's why for years and years, people go, how could that be legal? How is that legal that you got to have a colored fountain and a whitewater fountain? How is it that you got a colored restaurant and a white restaurant? How is that? How is that possibly legal? Plessy versus Ferguson. And that was done in the late 1890s by the Supreme Court. They upheld that. It was fought. They went through all the courts and went to Supreme Court, and that's what they decided. And they just chopped up parts of the Voting Rights Act a few years back, right? That these people don't care. right? They're fascist. They're a fascist arm of the oligarchy. And why did the oligarchy put that in the first place? Because Washington and Jefferson on those guys wanted to make sure that if they lost in the lower court, right, their case could be still upheld at the Supreme Court. And as you and I know, if you go to the Supreme Court, that's it, short of a federal law, which is why the Democrats are full of shit. Because Barack Obama and Joe Biden both ran on, first thing I get in office, I'm going to codify Roe v. Wade. And what did Obama do? With a supermajority, by the way. He had 60 senators, do whatever he wants, right? What did he give us? A right-wing healthcare plan, more wars, kicking 7 million people out of their homes, carried over from the TARP of George W. Bush. But did he get more money to help those people who be kicked out of their homes? No, the banks got those homes and resold them. BlackRock is the largest. Blackstone is the largest real estate company in this country. They have like 70% of all the rental property now. And they were kind of a middling company before the crash in 2008. But he could do that. But then when he was questioned, hey, how come you didn't codify Roe v. Wade? Well, that's not very high on my legislative priorities right now. Not high on your legislative priorities. What does that tell you? It tells you should quit voting for Democrats. Republicans are already demonic. We already know. This is not a secret. They've been saying this for decades that they were going to do this, right? And when they had a majority, they didn't even have the balls to try to codify abortion to make it illegal, right? But this is the thing. Look at the Supreme Court and what they've done, and don't tell me this won't happen. Remember, Bill Clinton signed DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. Bill Clinton and Joe Biden pimped that too because he voted for it. And then Bill Clinton went on the 700 Club to brag about it. The Democratic president went on a fucking Christian show to brag about the Defense of Marriage Act, the Anti-Gay Marriage Act. That's what that was. Signed into law by the president of the United States. 2015, at that time, the Supreme Court overturned that, saying it was, illegal, which it was. Then all of a sudden, we go to Roe v. Wade, which was never codified into law. Kind of my point. Even if they did codify it in the law, I think the Supreme Court would have overturned it anyway. But that's what puts this shit on the chopping block. That's why I say we get rid of the Supreme Court. Let lawmakers make laws, period, right? DOMA sucked. Awesome. You get a bunch of Democrats who really believe in this shit, right? But we got a bunch of pro-lifer, anti-union Democrats like the shithead in Louisiana, that Democratic governor who just, signed a trigger law for Louisiana to make abortions illegal. Henry Couillard, who's running for Congress south of me in San Antonio, is a pro-life, anti-gun legislation, anti-union Democrat. But yet he's got Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and all these guys campaigning for him down there because they don't care who it is. They just want a Democrat to win because then, he's going to satisfy their corporate donors. These people don't care about you. They don't care about what's right. They only care about money. So if you still labor under the delusion that the Democratic Party is some FDR leftover thing, it's not. It was on its way out, and the Clintons came in and fucking destroyed it and turned it into a blue Republican Party, which is what they fucking are. And if you keep voting for this shit, you're an idiot of the highest order. Like seriously, you shouldn't be voting. At all. If you don't know what these people do and how they vote, if you just read Twitter, she's so awesome. Not her voting record. Her voting record is shit. Her voting record is right alongside of Nancy Pelosi. Hang on. Let me take a sip of this here. Little vodka soda for the afternoon. Boy, that tastes good. And to paraphrase Dennis Leary, those of you that are in a program or something, I'm sorry. Anyway, but yeah. So what's next? The Civil Rights Act. What's next? We're going to overturn the 13th Amendment and bring back slavery. What's next? That's how draconian it is. To me, overturning Roe v. Wade is as draconian as overturning the goddamn 13th Amendment, which I wouldn't be surprised if we did it. Or we said, oh, no, it's states' rights. Like I could just see that going down because that's what they did with Roe v. Wade, by the way, and people that, with the GI Bill, for example, Truman bucked that down to states' rights, right? So certain states had the right to not give home loans to black GIs coming back from fighting in a war for this country. They couldn't get an education in Georgia, right? So they had to go to California. They had to go to, New York. They had to go to Washington State. They had to, go out west or up north, right? Massachusetts, anywhere else but the South, because the South was like, oh, fuck you guys. We're not going to give you the money that the feds say that you can have because you fought for this country. That's a level of respect that this country has for its weaker people that don't have power, right? It's just fuck you, fuck women, fuck people of color, fuck, but by the way, that's how this country was founded, right? 6% of this country, the laws were made for 6% of this country, the guys running things. Excuse me, if you were white without property, you couldn't vote, period. If you went bankrupt, you had a bad crop, you were done until you bounced back. So even if you were white, you couldn't vote. It was designed for the richest 6% of this country. That's Native Americans didn't have a right to vote. Black people didn't have a right to vote. They were slaves. Women didn't have a right to vote. They were chattel. I mean, a woman can get a credit card on her own without being without having a cosigner, as I mentioned, until 1974. That's within my lifetime. That's within a lot of you listening now in your lifetime. If you are 48 years old or older, that's within your lifetime. A woman couldn't get a credit card without a male cosigner, dad, uncle, or whatever. But that's the thing. So that's kind of where we find ourselves. And people keep insisting that this greatest country on earth. I'm like, I don't see it. We fail on every metric, and things like this just tell you. I mean, how many back alley abortions are we going to have now? I mean, let's face it, a poor woman in West Virginia or Mississippi or somewhere working maybe 2 jobs, 3, for minimum wage, can't even afford to. Gas is ridiculous. I mean, 6 months ago, cost $25 to fill up my car here in Austin, Texas. Now it's like $60, right? I'm lucky, but that doesn't mean I like it. I'm lucky that I can, quote, afford it, but that doesn't mean it should be normal. Gas should be $2 a gallon for the rest of my fucking life, the way we give these guys trillions of dollars in bailouts and subsidies. I shouldn't be paying for $5 a gallon for gas or $8 in California. It's ridiculous. And for those of you who want to say, oh, you're a socialist, you're goddamn right I am. You know why? Socialist means for the society. Capitalist means for the capital, the capitalist. That's what it means. And I'm anti-capital because not everything's a business. Sorry. And by the way, and those of you that don't know that difference and you're terrified at what I'm saying, you don't own the means of production. Johnny Plumber, if you have a plumbing shop with 6 vans, awesome. They're not coming for you, right? They're not coming for the window guy down the street who has, 4 trucks and 10 guys working for him. That's not who they're coming after. They're coming after the means of production, oil, medical, education. These things are supposed to be rights. We pay taxes. And if we subsidize these motherfuckers, then we should be getting the fruits of their spoils since our money goes to support them. I got to go to a bank to borrow my own money back at 2 to 3% interest for a home loan or a car, 18% on a credit card. No. How about we have a national bank at a 10% credit card and a 1% home loan, period. You know why? Because that's my money. Chase Bank is going to, charge me a penalty of some kind because why? They have my money. It's my money. Most of their money is my money. Think about that. Most of that money is your money. Not to mention your savings, but how they run on these criminal credit lines that they get from the government. We were giving them $1 trillion a day during the COVID fiasco for like a month to keep Wall Street and the stock market up, which is a total Ponzi scheme anyway. So back to this, because I'm almost done here. This is going to be a short one today. We should abolish the Supreme Court. Like I said, it has become nothing more than a cowardly punt for lawmakers to not write laws that will get them unelected, which gets me to term limits. We should have 3 terms for the Congress and 2 terms for the Senate, and that's it. Get done what you need to get done, and then peace out. And we'll still be nice and cut you a nice little retirement like you already have. But these terminal fucking ghouls, Pelosi, McConnell, Dianne Feinstein. Oh my God. Like these guys have been in Bernie Sanders. These guys have been in office 25, 35, 40 fucking years and have gotten nothing done for people. Anytime you hear bipartisan, bend over and grab your ankles because the thunder's coming, because that means you're just going to get screwed. That's all it is. But the main reason why the Supreme Court should be abolished It's a lifetime appointment. I didn't elect any of these guys. Neither did you. It's a lifetime appointment by a president, confirmed by the Senate. And then we're stuck with them. Amy Coney Barrett, she's a fucking idiot. She's a fucking idiot. But she went down to school. She's a fucking idiot. She thinks like the Handmaid's Tale. She's like, I'm subservient to my husband. That fucking cult they call the Catholic Church. Neil Gorsuch, Jeff Kavanaugh. Jesus Christ, John Roberts. I mean, before the other cronies showed up, John Roberts actually made a few good decisions in his day. And now he's completely, co-opted. Clarence Thomas, motherfuck that guy. And by the way, motherfuck any Democrat that wants to sit there and blame me for not voting for Hillary Clinton when Barack Obama could have done a recess appointment of Merrick Garland, right? But he didn't, because cynically he thought if we hold the Supreme Court over the people's heads, even a shithole candidate like Hillary Clinton will win the election. And you couldn't screw it up any further than to have her win by 5 million votes and still lose the Electoral College. Amazing, right? And do a game show host. Just incredible, absolutely incredible. But that's where the Democrats have fucked up. And if you don't like Clarence Thomas, then you should really have it in for Joe Biden, because maybe some of you aren't old enough to remember, but I remember when he slut-shamed Anita Hill for 2 straight days of testimony, and made it sound like she was completely uncredible and a whack job. And technically, he didn't vote for Clarence Thomas when it came time, but he knew the votes were in, so he didn't care. But he spent 2 days being Thomas's champion, even though the guy was a total jackhole who didn't believe in affirmative action, even though that's how he got through fucking college and law school. Bingo. Excuse me. We'll take a little sip here. All this ranting sort of chaps my hide. So there's that. But I say all that to say that this is a bipartisan level of fuckery. And anybody who's saying, I'll vote blue in November because, okay, well, the Democrats have had a shot now for 4 administrations: Carter, Clinton, Obama, and Biden. And even though Biden doesn't have a supermajority, he's got a simple majority. And the filibuster is still there, because one of the first things they could have done when they got into office was try to get rid of the filibuster. The filibuster is not a law, by the way. It's not in the Constitution. It's just a tradition of the Senate. We've had it. We've not had it. We've had it. We've not had it. And all it is, if you talk about what pussies the Democrats are, all it is an instrument for Democrats to ask for permission of Republicans to bring something in to the Senate, even though the Democrats have the fucking majority, right? But then they have these assholes like Tim Kaine, pro-life, anti-labor dickhead, who was actually Hillary Clinton's VP. I mentioned earlier, the governor of Louisiana is a Democrat, and he just put trigger laws into place for Louisiana to make abortion illegal, right? He's a Democrat. Henry Cuellar, they got Democrats campaigning down there for him. Steny Hoyer, all these guys, or Nancy Pelosi, are campaigning for a pro-life, anti-union, anti-gun legislation Democrat. These are your Democrats, blue Republicans. So to continue voting for them and think that they're going to do better for you when they have failed at every level. I put out a paper on Substack a couple weeks back called "Less is More," and it was just the top 20 fuck ups of the Biden administration. For anybody to tell me, "Oh no, he's accomplished a couple," no, he hasn't accomplished anything. He's actually accomplished less than Donald Trump, and I never thought I would live to say that. And I'm not a Trump fan. I'm just simply telling you, he's blue Trump, and if you think otherwise, you've been watching too much goddamn television. But then that's the canard too. Everyone the states' rights thing. Everyone jumps into states' rights. And what's so angering about that is states' rights. I've never seen states' rights be applied to anything good for people. Right? The GI Bill, for example. You got black guys that came back from the war, World War II, fighting in a war, dying. That the dead guys didn't get the GI Bill. But then Truman, political coward that he was, bucked it down to states' rights. So you couldn't get a home loan in Georgia if you were a black guy. Couldn't get college money if you're a black or brown guy. You had to go to California. You had to go to Washington State. You had to go up north, right? That's what when they say states' rights, I have never seen it, get bucked down to anything that's good for people. So this bullshit with, Roe v. Wade, bucking it down to states' rights. Well, some states shouldn't be making those rights, because an American citizen States aren't countries, right? And if you believe in a democracy, then not everybody in a state should be beholden to some prehistoric witch rules. I said witch rules, but it sounds like rituals. So witch rules are kind of like rituals, aren't they? It's like a bunch of witch rules, like witchy poo. Interesting. I'll have to kind of toy with that, not do it on your time. But the voodoo magic in Louisiana or Texas or anywhere else getting applied to everybody who lives here, even though not everybody believes in that shit. All right. Like I said, I have freedom from religion. All right. That's my right. You're not just being nice to me, letting me believe what I believe. We are not a Christian nation. As I wrap this up, you need to know that we're not a Christian nation. We were run by a bunch of deists at best. And if you read the quotes of Thomas Paine, Ben Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, none of them had a high esteem for the church. They saw having freedom of religion as kind of a necessary evil because there are a lot of religious people. But the separation of church and state, which is another thing these pro-lifer assholes love to ignore, the separation of church and state was there to separate the church from the state. So they didn't have what they had in England, where the Anglican church was the law. You make laws by men and you live by them. That was their kind of attitude about that. So church wasn't this thing. We're not a Christian nation. They read the Bible. Most of those guys came up and reading the Bible, but it wasn't this craziness that we've had since the 50s here, where it's just, it goes from Jesus to the 12 apostles of the founding fathers. That's not even true. And, in addition to reading the Bible, they read Socrates, they read Plato, they studied the Roman form of government, which ironically enough, 10% of those guys ran everything too. And everyone else were slaves or serfs, kind of like what they established here in the United States. And, here we are. So a lot to consider, a lot to chew on as I wrap this up. I think the 12-year-old vasectomy idea is a good one. Used to kind of mean it as a joke, like I said, to piss off my conservative friends at parties. But now I'm starting to think, no. And if anybody says, you can't do that, you're violating my child's rights. Okay, well, then you're violating here's your pro-life bullshit thrown right back at you. I'll probably think of more that I should have said, as this thing comes out, but get the gist. Again, folks, the bittertruth.info, INFO. Also, you could visit me on abeabdelhadi.substack.com. If you have the title of the show in front of you, that's my last name. So just put them together, .substack.com. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.